Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to join our notification gang. What's the creepiest thing you've seen at a sleepover? In 6th grade I camped at my friend's house with him and one other friend. They lived in the country, so they had plenty of acreage, although we were only 200 feet or so from his house. At about 2 a.m. we heard people shouting, "Go! Get them!" Now, naturally we freaked out and left the tent running. Come to find out, their neighbor's house was getting raided for drugs. First time staying at a friend's house when I was about 10 or so. I moved around a lot as a kid, so we were new friends and I didn't know her that well. Her stepdad came in to say goodnight, and gave her a big long hug. She went really quiet and then told me she was glad I was staying over. A few weeks later, she didn't come to school on Monday. Tuesday night, on the news, they reported a man had been arrested for molestation and rape of a minor, and named the fairly short street she lived on. She didn't come back to school. We moved again a few months later and I never saw her again. I still remember the look on her face after he hugged her. As a child, I didn't understand, but as an adult looking back, it makes me stabby. Friend with a sleep disorder went to the kitchen to cook in the middle of the night. He was sleepwalking, talking. It's fascinating and creepy to witness. Also, all his knives need to be locked in a drawer every night for that same reason. Spent the night for the first time at a friend's house with another friends. Both were great guys, but later in the night, after we smoked weed, we went out in his den to watch TV. I'm on the armchair, both of them on the love seat. They toss me a blanket, and grab one themselves. He turns on porn and they both proceed to beat their meat under the same blanket, and, since it was my first time getting high, I just stared, flabbergasted at what was happening. So I told them I had to go do it in the bathroom for privacy, but I just sat on the toilet for like an hour and went back outside when I heard the TV change to something else. Not really creepy, but their just complete and total assumption I would partake with them felt really strange to me. My friend said the first and only time he spent the night at a mutual friend's place after gaming, drinking, etc. Mutual friend's mum came down early in the AMs, didn't turn any lights on, hunched over and stared at his face for a good 30 seconds. Then paced around their living room, kitchen silently and went back upstairs. A mattress in a closet that smelled like pee. These people were military, tidy as hell, with 6 kids, and this was a hall closet between the kids' rooms. I opened it looking for a blanket that wasn't that rough sandpaper blanket with the satin trim, you all know the one, and there was this single kid's mattress on the floor, smelling like super rolled, musty pee with no sheets or blankets or pillows. I shut the door and said nothing about it. I was 7. My friend invited me over to her house for a sleepover once, and she mentioned she had a little cockroach problem. I don't have a huge problem with roaches, and didn't seem like that big of a deal, so I agreed to go. When I got there, I saw that it wasn't as much as a little cockroach problem, but more of a severe infestation. Her and her parents didn't really seem to mind it, so I didn't say anything. So my friend wanted to go straight to bed, and I was put on the couch in the living room. She turned the lights out, except for a little nightlight, and my friend went to sleep. That's when all of the cockroaches that had been hiding in the walls, and in the little corners all came out and were crawling on the floors and the walls the entire night. The floor was literally covered completely in roaches. I couldn't sleep because I knew if I did they would crawl all over me. They kept crawling up the walls next to the couch and falling on me. I spent the entire night playing on my phone and trying to ignore them. But then a huge jumping spider crawled out too and walked among all of the roaches, and I cried so hard I was surprised I didn't wake my friend up. My phone died and I ended up falling asleep for about an hour. I haven't been back since. But I really hope they eventually got the infestation taken care of. It must have been hard to live with. When I was about 11 or 12, I got invited over with maybe 5 other girls for a sleepover. Everything was normal until the middle of the night. We're all sitting in her bedroom with the door closed when somebody starts freaking pounding on the door. I mean, I thought it was going to break off its hinges. We're dead quiet for a minute, and then some dude starts screaming, "Let me in. I want to see your pajamas." Friend says she knows who it is, opens the door and tells him to fuck off. Turns out it was her, single, mom's friend. He had come over at some point, they got drunk, and he decided it would be fun to scare the shit out of us since we didn't know he was there. The pajamas comment was still creepy though. During the slumber party for my 10th birthday, my mother staggered into my room in the middle of the night, wasted out of her mind, and took a dump on my bed in front of all of my friends. When I was 12 or 13, I had a sleepover at a friend's house. About 2 a.m., her drunk dad came sneaking downstairs and tried to fondle me. I ran home crying, but was too afraid to tell my dad. Roughly 20 years later, my friend killed herself, possibly because of the horrible shit her dad had done to her, and her brother. The dad had already died by then, and never faced justice. Her alcoholic mother died soon after my friend. Her brother disappeared years ago, probably is dead too. He was involved heavy in hard drugs. I was staying over at a friend's house with others around junior year of high school. We were upstairs in his room, just eating pizza and playing games, when the friend hosting us starts staring out the window. He mutes the TV and gets the room quiet, and we hear someone wailing. It didn't sound like anyone in pain or fear, just someone screaming to screaming. Keep in mind this at 1 in the morning and on a dead-end street with only one functioning street light post. We're all looking out the window at this point and hear the wailing getting closer to the entrance of the street. With the minuscule amount of light there is, we all saw a silhouette, a super tall guy sprinting like a deer across the sidewalk. The wailing faded the farther the guy ran away. We ended up staying up until 6 a.m. because we were too spooked to sleep. I had my girlfriend over to my place for a night a few years back. She decided to go to the bathroom at 2 in the morning, which woke me up slightly. Now I do not know why, but for whatever reason she decided to furiously knock on the bedroom door, yelling for me to open it back up, so I rush up and turn the lights on. Turns out she was sleepwalking, but I have never been more afraid of where I lived ever. I didn't see it, but apparently when I was asleep one of my now ex-friends dry humped my head. I was ill and basically passed out from exhaustion. She was obsessed with me and it wasn't okay. I was in the 6th grade and had a sleepover at my buddy's house. I got up to use the bathroom and I saw my buddy's dad leave the bathroom and walk down the hall with his balls hanging out of his briefs, his big old balls swinging back and forth. I still go back to that day in the 80s every time I see a pair of truck nuts on pickup. It was my birthday sleepover. Everything was going semi-normal till about 11. My mother and baby sister were trying to sleep while my friend chases us around the house, threatening to kill us. Obviously we are very creeped out. My mum and baby sister somehow sleep through this. She says it's a game, calm down multiple times. She's literally holding a knife from when we cut the cake at this point, and my other non-psycho friend and I are hiding in the downstairs closet. Thankfully some sort of switch flipped in her brain and she says, "Come on guys, game's over, let's go sleep." This was one of the only times I have ever been threatened with a knife. We honestly thought she'd kill us that night. Went to spend the night at my cousin's place. His younger sister had 3 friends over, too. So there was me, him, and 4 girls, all around 14-15. At about 1 in the morning we all sneak out to go sit in the RV they had parked in the backyard. Of course a truth or dare game starts up. Long story short, one of the girls wound up standing in the back lane bare naked at 2:30 a.m., bleeping herself with the neck of an empty wine bottle and singing "If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands" at the top of her lungs. The kicker is, it was dared by one of the girls. My stepsister's birthday party when we were like 11 or 12 probably. We made a fake Ouija board out of a piece of paper and a deodorant cap. The spirit said it was my grandpa, who had died when I was 2. My mum and stepdad didn't get married until I was 6, so my stepsister and her friends definitely didn't know anything about my grandpa. I didn't know that much either. I asked what his middle initial was and it said K. I went upstairs and asked my mom what Papa's middle name was and she said Kenny. It was probably just a coincidence, but it scared the hell out of 12-year-old me. I used to be part of a Christian traveling chorus. On our tours, we would stay at the homes of the members of the church we performed at. The most memorable night was the house had more mannequins than a clothing store. Seriously, these things were everywhere. They had to have hundreds of them. The kitchen, living room, bedrooms, hallways, garage, yard, you name it. There were even 2 in the shower, which is not what I wanted to see after a long day of traveling and performing. Myself and 3 friends were sleeping at one of their houses one night in high school. We were pulling an all-nighter just freaking around, but one of us, the one who lived at this house, starts falling asleep around 3 a.m. and heads upstairs to bed. The rest of us keep hanging out in the living room. Around 4 a.m., I get up and walk into the kitchen for a snack. The way his house was set up, when you walked into the kitchen from the living room you had a view of the whole front yard, which was a fairly long and steep hill. I immediately see 3 freaking full-grown men walking around out front. I freaked the fuck out and ran back into the living room to tell the other 2 friends. They didn't believe me but got up to come see. We crouched down and looked and realized they were cops. We ran upstairs to sleeping friend's room to wake him up and watch the front lawn from his bedroom window, and noticed there were no cop cars in sight. By the time we woke sleeping friend up, they were gone. He still doesn't believe us and we still don't know what they were doing. Not that creepy I guess, but at the time it was. I went to a friend's house one time, and I heard his parents yelling. I didn't think much of it because it stopped, and his mom came in his room, where we were playing games. She just stood there and his dad came in, started yelling, and slammed her into the wall. I am horrified, while my friend literally just sat there playing GTA. The parents then left and the dad comes in 5 minutes later, after they probably broke like all of the dishes in the kitchen, all bloody because she stabbed him. Normally, this would be weird, but my friend and his parents acted like nothing happened while I called my mum to get me the fuck out of there. Sleepover with a couple of buds to one of our friends' place. It was a drive for over 3 hours at late in the night. Turns out the place where he had his house was in a really rural and secluded place. So, to reach the house we had to go through some really creepy roads, and I mean creepy. No streetlights other than that of my car, no one on the streets, no network. Nothing, only barren land and patches of trees around. So when we reached the place, it turned out to be a really small rural community and not a single soul. What was creepy about this area was the minute we stopped to find the house, every single person was standing outside looking at us. It was the most creepiest thing I've seen. The house was in some forest-dense area with no other house than that of my buds. We told him and the entire fam what we had witnessed. They simply laughed and brushed it off as us imagining stuff. We left after a few hours of how creepy the whole ordeal was. My friend invited me over to her house for a sleepover once, and she mentioned she had a little cockroach problem. I don't have a huge problem with roaches, and didn't seem like that big of a deal, so I agreed to go. When I got there, I saw that it wasn't as much as a little cockroach problem, but more of a severe infestation. Her and her parents didn't really seem to mind it, so I didn't say anything. So my friend wanted to go straight to bed, and I was put on the couch in the living room. She turned the lights out, except for a little nightlight, and my friend went to sleep. That's when all of the cockroaches that had been hiding in the walls, and in the little corners all came out and were crawling on the floors and the walls the entire night. The floor was literally covered completely in roaches. I couldn't sleep because I knew if I did they would crawl all over me. They kept crawling up the walls next to the couch and falling on me. I spent the entire night playing on my phone and trying to ignore them. But then a huge jumping spider crawled out too and walked among all of the roaches, and I cried so hard I was surprised I didn't wake my friend up. My phone died and I ended up falling asleep for about an hour. I haven't been back since. But I really hope they eventually got the infestation taken care of. It must have been hard to live with.